Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Council meeting on Monday, the 17th of February 2025. I now ask that you all remain standing and remain silent while my chaplain, Phil Pusey, MBE, leads us in prayer. Thank you.
In the last few days, many of us have been celebrating love, whether that be with a partner, with family members, or those extra special friendships. New terms like galentines are being more widely used. When celebrating love, it is perhaps useful to remind ourselves of exactly what we're talking about. So I've returned to a well-known poem often used at weddings. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast. Love is not proud. Love is not rude. It is not self-seeking. Love is not easily angered, and it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil. It rejoices in the truth. Love always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. This can feel quite analytical breakdown of love, whereas love is always emotional, always a choice, and always an action. So perhaps we should reread that list, putting our name in the place of the word love. Phil is patient, sometimes. Phil is kind when he remembers to be. Phil does not envy. Phil doesn't boast. Phil is not proud. Phil is not rude. Phil is not self-seeking. Phil is not easily angered, except when things don't go his way. Phil keeps no record of wrongs. He does not delight in evil. Phil rejoices in the truth, even when it exposes his self-interest. Phil always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Phil never fails. Almighty God, we realize quickly that we fall short of the high standards that love sets and that you set as a God of perfect love. Help each of us to grow in all elements of love, in all of our dealings with our fellow humanity and the creation of which we are a part. Amen.
Thank you very much, Phil. May I remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded and that if you speak, you need to put your microphones on. If people don't mind, I'm going to remain seated tonight for most of the proceedings. Thank you. You can sit down now. So we'll move to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies have been received from Councillors Hudson, Halton and Bailey. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Thank you. Item 3, minutes of the previous council meeting. I propose approval of the public minutes of the council meeting held on the 9th of December 2024. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Can we now go to the vote? All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's all carried then. announcements from the Mayor. I've got two announcements. One, in view of the large number of people tonight, I'm going to bring agenda item 12 forward to agenda item 6, so we'll debate the motion straight after item 5. The other announcement is that you may have heard Councillor Barry Panter from Newcastle under Lyme was unfortunately in a car crash and died at the weekend. I'd like to ask my chaplain just to stand and we'll have a minute's silence. He was somebody I have met and attended various meetings with. He was a very nice man, as was his family, so I'm very sorry personally about the loss, and we have sent condolences from the council. Please stand.
Almighty God, we commend Barry to you. We pray for his family, for those who were close to him as friends, for his colleagues at Newcastle Borough Council, and for the people of that borough. Lord, be very present in their mourning and in their grief. And be a strength to them in their recovery from this shocking event. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. So we're going to move straight to the motion on notice, and I invite Councillor Saeed Hussain to put forward the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I beg to move the following motions with your indulgence. This council acknowledges the horrific genocide against the Hazara community that took place in 1891 to 1893, perpetrated by the forces of the Emir of Afghanistan, the then Abdur Rahman Khan. The systemic massacre and forced displacement of thousands of Hazara men, women, and children during this period remains one of the most tragic and brutal episodes in Afghan history. The effects of this genocide continue to reverberate within the Hazara community as they remain subject to enduring persecution and marginalization. Furthermore, this council condemns the ongoing mistreatment and torture of the Hazara people by the Taliban, who have continued to target this ethnic and religious minority. Hazara communities have been subjected to violence, discriminations, arbitrary arrests, and killings simply because of their ethnicity and religion. Madam Mayor, the Taliban's brutal actions include attacks on Hazara civilians, destructions of Hazara-owned property, and the systematic effort to suppress their culture cultural and religious practices. This council expresses its deep concerns about the current persecutions of the Hazara community, including the horrific attacks on Hazara individuals and Hazara institutions, the forced displacement of Hazara from their ancestral lands, and the torture of innocent Hazara men and women. The Taliban's treatment of the Hazara people constitutes ongoing crimes against humanity, reflecting a continuation of the legacy of persecution that began in 1891-1893. Of particular concerns of this council is the widespread and systematic oppressions of Hazara women under the Taliban's brutal regime. Hazara women who have long faced discriminations are now subjected to even more severe violations of their rights. The Taliban's policies have led to the systematic suppressions of Hazara women's freedoms, including restrictions on education, movement, and the right to work. Hazara girls are particularly affected by the Taliban's ban on education for women, which has left entire generations without access to schooling or opportunities for personal growth and empowerment. This council calls upon the UK government to, number one, officially recognize the 1891 massacre of the Hazara people as genocide and condemn the ongoing persecution of the Hazara people by the Taliban. Number two, support and work alongside the Hazara community in seeking justice for both the historic and current atrocities committed against them under the relevant accountability mechanisms. Number three, work with international partners to hold the Taliban accountable for their treatment of the Hazara community and ensure the protection of their human rights. Number four, provide humanitarian aid and support for Hazara refugees who have fled the violence, ensuring their safety and protections under international law. Additionally, this council encourages the local communities in East Staffordshire to raise awareness about the historical and ongoing persecution of the Hazara people, to support the efforts of the Hazara community for justice, and to stand in solidarity with them in their struggle for survival and recognitions. The council encourages the local communities in East Staffordshire to raise awareness about the historical and ongoing persecutions of the Hazara people, particularly the ongoing struggles of Hazara women, and to support efforts for justice and recognitions for this vulnerable group. The community is also urged to stand in solidarity with Hazara women in their pursuit for education, equality, and freedom from violence. This council resolves to, number one, officially recognize both the 1891 to 1893 Hazara genocide and the ongoing persecutions of Hazara people by the Taliban, and call for international recognitions of these atrocities. Number two, write to the Foreign, Commonwealth, and Development Office urging them to acknowledge the historic and current genocides and to take further diplomatic, legal, and humanitarian actions to support the Hazara people. Support educational initiatives with East Staffordshire that focus on the history, culture, and plight of the Hazara people, ensuring that their story is heard and their struggle recognized. Madam Mayor, with your permission, I commend this one to the House. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very eloquent speech. Is there a seconder for this motion? Thank you. Councillor Paul Walker. Do you want to reserve your right to speak, or do you want to speak now? Okay. So I'll open it up to the floor. Are there any other speakers? Okay. Councillor Bernard Peters.
Madam Mayor, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'd like to thank you and the proposer for having the foresight to bring this important issue further up the agenda. It's a significant topic, and we need to be seen to supporting the Hazara people in Burton. I have a lot of experience back in the day, as they say, working at the neighbourhood centre with several of the colleagues that are here tonight. So I have no problem supporting this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and can I thank Councillor Hussain for tabling this motion, and I want to welcome all the Hazara people here tonight with us and in the chamber. The Hazara Centre sits within my ward, and as I'm sure all who have been there would agree, it is a wonderful and welcoming place, and it's a facility that offers a real insight into the life of the Hazara people and their interesting but also very bleak history. Burton is a proud multicultural town, and at a time when there is so much division and hate, it is important to acknowledge the positive contributions that the Hazara people have brought to our town, along with other communities for that matter. The motion details the history of the Hazara community, and it gives a real insight into the generations of struggle and persecution, largely on the grounds of religion. I'm very proud to be part of an internationalist movement that calls out persecution and stands with victims around the world. History tells you it's often trade unions leading the fight for peace around the world. The Hazara struggles and the desperate lengths they are taking to flee oppression shows why we can't turn a blind eye. The Hazara community in Burton has shown that they are an honest, hard-working group of people just trying to live in peace, which is why we must be prepared to fight for them and take the steps the motion outlines and honour our moral and ethical obligations to give the Hazara people the safety and security they deserve. So I will support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Walker, would you like to speak?
Madam Mayor, if I can be blessed with your wisdom, please, could you please advise me whether will I have a chance to respond to the debate as well as a proposer of the motion?
You can do it if you're brief, Councillor Hussain, because you did have quite a comprehensive motion at the first place.
There's a first brief. Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a great honour to second this motion, and I want to welcome members of the Hazara community who are here, and I believe quite a significant amount are watching downstairs. And it can only be hoped that this motion gives them some recognition and acknowledgement that we are, as a local authority, that we value the contribution that they make to our community, and also that we are willing to take a visible stance in support of their fight for peace and human rights. Shobnall, as you well know, Madam Mayor, is a wonderful, diverse community, and it's been a great pleasure to meet Hazaris living in and around Shobnall. Like I consider a number of us across the chamber who have visited the Hazara Centre in Burton, you begin to feel warmth, hospitality of this much persecuted community. Many of the Afghans living in Burton are from the Hazara community. So it has been an honour to attend the renaming of the ceremony of the Afghan Centre to the Hazara Centre with Councillor Hussain during his time as Mayor. During that event, historians gave a detailed presentation about the struggle of the Hazara people over the generations, and when you dive into the past and the current persecution from the Taliban, you begin to see the plight of the Azari people has tragically slipped from the world's attention. Even today, Azari communities in Afghanistan face the risk of targeted religious-motivated attacks from the Taliban, forcing many to take dangerous steps to flee, circumstances none of us in this room could even imagine facing. I won't go into the history in detail as it was written down in the motion, and you can look for yourselves. But I will say this: trade unionists are internationalists, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with working people facing persecution anywhere in the world. Whether it is a bad employer in the UK like P&O, Palestinians having their homes destroyed by genocide in Gaza, to the Azari people facing religious persecution in Afghanistan. Why? Because an attack on one is an attack on all. And then victims of conflict around the world are the voiceless. So it is quite often trade unionists that lead that charge in the call for peace. At a time when politics has become diverse and dangerous, far-right rhetoric fueling agendas, there has never been a better, more needed time to come together. This chamber has done it before for Ukraine and Gaza, and now we must do the same for the Azari community. Last week, the leader of both main parties were advocating, and I quote, closing legal loopholes, after a family of 6 refugees from Gaza were allowed to settle in the UK under the Ukraine family scheme. This is wrong, and I condemn it in the strongest possible way, but that is a sign of how hate and division has destroyed our politics. According to the United Nations, a refugee is a person who has fled their country to escape conflict, violence or persecution. Ukrainians fleeing conflict with Russia are refugees. Palestinians fleeing the war in Gaza are refugees. This is a plight that has faced Azari people and is continuing to do so. It is our responsibility through every means possible to tell the story of the Azari people, including through sport, but all our responsibilities to honour our international obligations and say to the Azari community, we stand with you, we will continue to be your voice if need be. Refugees are welcome here, so it gives me great pleasure, Madam Mayor, to second this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Hussain, have you got some last-minute remarks?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to especially thank all the councillors, especially who took the part in this debate, especially members of West Valley, members for Barton Town, and also my seconder for the Shobnal. As we raise our voices for the Hazara women, we must also acknowledge their struggles and reflections of wider issues, one that calls for solidarity and support from for the ongoing operations by the Taliban. So I encourage both sides of the chamber to support these motions and pass this motion. Madam Mayor, I must emphasize that this is the first motion we are going to make a history in the whole Europe. This is the first motion this chamber is going to make if we pass this motion tonight. I especially thank all the Hazara members in the gallery today, especially the chairman of the society, Mr. Omid Zafri, for his encouragement, and also the scholars behind it to prepare these motions as well. So members, through you, Madam Mayor, I would like to ask all fellow members, let us make a history tonight, and let's be the first council in the whole Europe who passed this motion, the history motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So we can now move to the vote. All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? No, I can say the vote is unanimously carried. Thank you, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I just need to go back to item 5, urgent business. There are 2 questions have come in, and they will be dealt with under item 13 as questions to the council. So we'll come to them at item 13. So I'm now going to move to item 6, the medium-term financial strategy, and invite the Cabinet Member for Finance and Treasury Management to propose and present the item. Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is my privilege to present the Borough Council's budget for the 2025-26 financial year, alongside our updated medium-term financial strategy, commonly known as MTFS, covering the period 2025-26 to 2027-28, and the supporting asset management and capital strategy. Councillors will be aware of the challenging financial environment in which we operate. The combination of current economic conditions, growing demands on council services, and significant planned changes to the local government finance, including a business rates reset, a funding needs reassessment, creating ongoing uncertainty for our financial future. The Council has faced unprecedented reductions in settlement funding from the government, with a 78% reduction amounting to 6.4 million reduction between 2010 and 2019. Although there has been some growth in funding since 2020, it has not reversed those earlier cuts. Our funding envelope is largely determined by the local government finance settlement. The provisional settlement for 2025-26 was announced on 18th of December 2024, with the final settlement published a couple of weeks ago on 3rd of February 2025. Unfortunately, the settlement for 2025-26 is again for 1 year only, with no increase in spending power for our council, which effectively means a cut. This is notably lower than the national average increase of 6% for the councils overall. However, there are some positives. New homes bonus funding will continue for 2025-26 at 0.754 million pounds, though this will be the final year. Business rate multiplier fees for businesses with compensatory grants provided to the councils, £502 million allocated to councils for employer national insurance contributions, with our share being 0.132 million. Revenue support grant of 0.145 million, recovery grant of 0.349 million, and minimum funding floor grant of 0.397 million. Despite this, the settlement has not been sufficient to alleviate our financial pressures to provide medium-term certainty, necessitating savings and income generation totaling 0.233 million, and a proposed council tax increase of 2.98%, that is £5.92 per year for Band D, and for Band A, 3.95 pence, £3.95 per year, or 8 pence per week. Our strategic approach enables us to respond positively, investing significantly in the borough with 40.255 million capital program and 0.48 million in revenue investments, whilst protecting services and balancing the budget. Revenue investments for 2025-26 include £37,000 for ICT improvement with a move to Office 365, £38,000 for environmental health in preparation for the Renters' Right Bill, £230,000 for ongoing works to the council's tree stock and investment in the council's grounds maintenance provision to enable us to continue to contribute positively to the local environment. £32,000 for ongoing investment in the development of the council's operational depot to ensure this continues to be appropriate to deliver the council's waste and street cleaning provision. £34,000 for trimming support pilot for mowing teams to reduce the use of glyphosate. While our 2025-26 budget is balanced, future years remain dependent on our MTFS smoothing reserve, 0.491 million for 2026-27 and 1.364 million for 2027-28. The position for those latter years is in the main driven by the assumption that A, there is a business rates reset ahead of 2026-27 in line with the government's current consultation paper, and B, redistribution of resources across local government and a freeze, i.e. no increase in the core spending power in line with our national policy for 2025-26. I extend my heartfelt thanks to our officers for their hard work in preparing this budget and to my fellow cabinet members for their continued support and collaboration. I commend this budget to the council and urge members to approve medium-term financial strategy and the supporting asset management and capital strategy, ensuring our borough remains resilient and forward-looking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chowdhury. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Just before we move on, people are invited to stay for the whole meeting, but this is a very important council meeting and it may go on some time tonight. So anybody who would like to leave is welcome to leave now before we start the main debate. Thank you, everyone. Councillor Fitzpatrick, do you want to reserve your right to speak? Yes, thank you. Okay, would anyone like to speak on the motion? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll raise an amendment to get us going. That we propose an amendment that would commence a trial of Uttoxeter-specific reduced parking permit for students of Thomas Lane sixth form for 1 year.
Thank you. So I have an amendment here. Commence trial of a Uttoxeter-specific reduced-priced parking permit for students of Thomas Lane sixth form for 1 year, and it's signed by Councillor Allen. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Peters. Saw his hand first. Do you want to reserve your right to speak, Councillor Peters? You are. Okay. George, Councillor Allen, do you want to speak on this?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So notwithstanding the comments that the Cabinet members just made about this being a very difficult budget to set and a very challenging financial set of circumstances to deal with, pleased to say that this amendment won't actually cost the Council all that much money at all. In fact, the estimates and the advice that we've got from the 151 officer is that it would be zero. Now, I'm sure members will reflect on, will be quite aware that when residents or community groups come to you, you always want to say yes, you always want to do the right thing and help them out. And so when the students contacted me and asked me to come down and speak to them about a few different things, and this was just one of them, happy to go down and speak to them. And of course, when they first asked, oh well, could we have free parking spaces on the Maltings car park? It's right next to the school, and it stops us having to walk all the way up from Town Meadows Way, where there's quite a bit of economic activity already. You want to say yes. Of course, I can't say yes because I'm not the leader of the council anymore. I'm not a cabinet member, so I couldn't say that. But I could at least raise it at this moment. But the more that I thought about it, and the more in drafting the amendment, the more it became obvious that this isn't just about doing something that students have asked us for, doing something that you want, and being successful in saying yes. What this could be more to do with is actually generating more economic activity on the high street in East Oxfordshire. So we know that the council's done a lot of work in trying to regenerate the high street in East Oxfordshire and Burton. And actually, as the parking review demonstrated, the most recent one was done in 2022, to do with the master plan and building up that work. Actually, there's at least around 70 spaces that are underutilised, and that was only at the most busiest times of the year. So actually granting 25 special permits to the students that would use this scheme really wouldn't necessarily impact either the council's income from parking, because the parking spaces would still be there, and actually might generate a new income stream that would just about pay for the administration costs of it. So that's my amendment, Madam Mayor. Really isn't anything to no political gaming with this at all. I've been asked by my community, a section of my community, to put something like this forward, and I'm pleased that actually it doesn't, on paper, doesn't look like it'll cost a great deal at all.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak on this? Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've some concerns about this. Where does it stop? I mean, yes, Elaine's sixth form college. Why would they be singled out for special attention over the people that don't drive cars? And oh dear, they've got to walk a bit further. I'm sure we're trying to stop people using cars in town centres anyway, aren't we? I am prepared to consider it further as time goes on, but my first instinct is to say that I can't support this. I mean, there are lots of other secondary schools within the borough. Are they all going to come up with the same request?
Thank you. Councillor Walker, Paul Walker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to dwell too long because I think Councillor Fletcher's just said it. My concern is, even though I have sympathy towards it, but my concern is the precedent it sets. Where do we stop with it? So if the mover could sort of give some more clarification on that, because we start at Elaine's, where do we finish? Do we carry on across the borough till it goes out to all? I don't know.
Okay, Councillor Bev George.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to back Councillor Allen up, actually. You know, these sixth formers have come to the council and asked, can we possibly use this car park to park our cars? You know, we're getting them off the streets. They've politely come and asked. As I know, as a previous cabinet member, this car park hasn't been utilised to its full capacity for years now. We're giving them the opportunity to be able to use it, and as Councillor Allen said, hopefully they may then wander into our high streets and spend some money there. So we haven't got anything to lose. It's not costing a lot of money, and it's actually going to benefit more people than not. So, okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go back to Councillor Peters. Did you indicate, Councillor Fitzpatrick? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, for bringing me in before the seconder gets to speak. I've got concerns about this as well. As soon as I saw it, I thought, sixth formers, and I see them outside here at the town hall every time it's 3 o'clock, lots of them, but they have cars at 18 years old. Maybe their parents have bought them, but some of these are quite new cars, so they can afford it, they can afford the insurance, they can afford the running costs, but they can't afford the parking. My understanding is that there is ample free parking in Uttoxeter, quite near this school, and it wouldn't hurt them to perhaps park there and walk up.
Okay, Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I'll temper my comments now because Councillor Allen and Councillor George really have captured the feelings that I wanted to share perhaps in a different way. And I totally support what they've both said, and I would ask everybody in the chamber to vote against this motion. For this motion. Apologies, for this motion.
Thank you. So the motion is to allow some reduced parking permits for the students. Would you like to speak, Councillor Chowdhury?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to respond to this amendment. Well, look, as has been said already, actually, there's a question in relation to the proposal, to this proposal, regarding the group which has been identified, and there is a risk of potential inequality and the challenge from other groups. For example, you know, why not students from other areas, as Councillor Fitzpatrick has alluded to? Why not other groups of people on low income, or even pension age? So there seems to be a bit of an inequality, really. It doesn't surprise me that you know, you put this amendment through to appease some of your people in your area, but that doesn't mean to say that it fits in with our council's policy per se. I'm grateful to Councillor Fletcher for offering to look at it. I think if there is a genuine proposal, then the cabinet member, Councillor Fletcher, would have a look at it. But my other concern is that it talks about an assessment of the impact of the trial is then proposed at the end of the year to inform a decision on whether or not to continue this initiative. I don't really know what you mean by that assessment. There is no outcome given. There's no criteria given for the assessment. So it's just really a meaningless comment. So it talks about environmental, economic activity. So how would that impact? How would that be assessed? So all of that is really quite wishy-washy. So I suggest that we reject this amendment, and if you want to take it further, then speak with Councillor Fletcher and then come up to see if there's a merit in reviewing it later on.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allen's asked to speak again. This is not normal procedure, but seeing as the MTFS is very important, I'll allow him one main point. Thank you.
In that case, Madam Mayor, can I just, because that's the one thing I should have said.
No, I'm going to stop it there. I've allowed Councillor Allen, then we'll go to the vote. Very quickly.
Apologies, Madam Mayor. I'm not necessarily asking to speak. I thought I did have the right to speak after, but it's just a... No, yeah, it's fine. No, I don't wish to speak if I'm not. If it's not a debating procedure, I'll leave it.
Sorry, just to clarify, Councillor Allen, paragraph 16.28, part 3 of the Constitution. At the end of the debate of an amendment, the mover of the original motion, who is Councillor Ali Chowdhury, shall have the right to reply, but they shall not otherwise speak on the amendment. The proposer of the amendment shall not have a right of reply. However, as I was trying to indicate to you, if the Mayor wills, if she decides that it's going to be conducive to the business of the council, then she could bring you back in. I believe that's what she was attempting to do, as you were, Mayor.
Okay, so I'm allowing Councillor Allen to make one further point.
I think I've just had a few questions about I think Councillor Walker invited me to explain a little bit more about it, and there's something that Councillor Fletcher mentioned about what if we do it for this school, why not other secondary schools? Of course, the secondary schools don't have children that are old enough to drive anyway, so this is about sixth form. I wish I could have proposed something around the sixth form car park that's near to the sixth form car park that's near to the college in Burton, but I eventually came back to, well, this is just a trial. Let's just see how it goes. I'm not sure the cabinet member really meant that it was wishy-washy and ill thought out, because, of course, if you do a new scheme around 25 new parking permits, and then none of them are paid, none of them are used, and at the end of it, then you can deduce that it's either too much or no one's really interested in using it. So that's what I meant around whether or not it's successful or not. And in terms of whether it actually generates an economic activity on the high street, I'm afraid that's a kind of a weakness that the council has, and has had for a while, it has to be said, around understanding who is using the car parks and whether or not it's actually, the decisions we make around car parking pricing is actually conducive to good economic activity on the high street. But hopefully I've answered some of those questions there.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to the vote. So those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hands. Those against? Any abstentions? Sorry, I forgot to. I was against, sorry. So the motion is lost. So we're now back with the original motion for the MTFS. Councillor Sankey.
Thank you. May I raise an amendment, please? Is that correct? Thank you very much.
Okay, so this amendment is about pension credit, that the council seeks to develop a communication programme to make households aware of eligibility for pension credit and to encourage households who are eligible but not currently claiming it to seek to do so. And it's signed by Councillor Sankey. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Clark, thank you. Do you want to retain your right to speak? Yes, okay. Do you want to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This proposal is to set up a campaign to effectively direct some limited resource of the council to target pensioners to make claims against the pension credit. The government has recently changed the criteria of pensioners to claim winter fuel allowance, and the new criteria requires them to claim pension credit. What we have got information from the Department of Work and Pension is that there are around about 800 households in East Staffordshire that are potentially eligible to claim pension credit and not currently doing so. And what we would like to do, even though the government has done this, we'd like to actually be a proactive approach to support these people. These are probably some of the most vulnerable people that are suffering at the moment during this time, to actually claim their pension credit. And the proposal includes, and there's a detailed one that a number of the councillors have seen, whereby we actually get some of the finance staff and the communication staff to send out social media information, put something in the press, and actually create a free phone number for a finite period of time to actually encourage more people to claim pension credit and therefore get that benefit and then go on to claim winter fuel allowance as well. This proposal does fit in with the central government's objective, because the central government objective was to raise the number of people claiming pension credit. It also fits in with the council's corporate objectives around standing up for our communities and creating a prosperous East Staffordshire. So what I'm looking for on this one, Madam Mayor, is what the Finance 151 Office has defined as trivial in budgetary terms of £36,000, and the details of in there to do this and push for a number of our vulnerable people in this borough to get the pension credit that they are entitled to and they deserve and they need at this difficult time. I'll end there. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak? No? In that case, I'll go back to Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm fully in support of this. I think it's a great local initiative and shows how we'd be driving forward equality and pushing forward with local government, with central government's plans to help those who are disadvantaged, particularly those from an older community that have already suffered from the loss of other benefits as well. I think there's also potential savings that could be made in the existing communications plan, which would go towards covering this. For example, the production and posting of material on X, formerly Twitter, which on average get around 20 to 30 views over a period of 2 to 3 weeks. I think there's potential savings in there that could be put towards this policy to reduce that insignificant cost even more so. So fully in support of this amendment by Councillor Sankey.
Okay, Councillor Walker.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. I'll chuck it out there as a question, as a statement or what. But I'm not sure where Councillor Cork comes across all the old age pensioners in East Staffordshire, but some of the ones I deal with and have been dealing with recently over issues, for instance, 87-year-old woman living in Shobnall, I can't think for one moment she mentioned Twitter or X. I can't even think she mentioned the internet. So I'm not sure where some of this information, where they're going to get it and pick it up.
Can you just put your microphone off? Sorry. Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. My first observation is that in terms of the costs, it says that it's going to cost us £36,200, but what it doesn't include is the management and the monitoring costs. So the actual cost is likely to be higher. But that said, DWP are also running a national campaign around this subject. So I think there is a much bigger and wider campaign, and if Councillor Clark is saying that we should be using more of a online, digital campaigning, then I suspect that they are. So anyway, there's a much bigger campaign which has been run by the DWP, and we need to take account of that. In addition to that, the council is partially funding a CAB worker and also partially funding Burton Albion workers. So they are continually providing advice to the people that they come across. So that is ongoing, and I think this is something that we could look at, and perhaps we can set up a small cross-party group which could actually look at the need and the different ways of communication in sort of more time than we had available here, since we had the amendment. But we are unable to support, my recommendation, we are unable to support this amendment as it is, but happy to look at it later on.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to the vote then. Those in favour of the pension credit amendment, please raise your hands. Those against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. So the motion is defeated. Thank you. We now move back to the main debate. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to propose another amendment, and that is for an increase of one fixed-term employee within the Community and Civil Enforcement Team from 2025-26 onwards.
Okay, I'll just read that again. It has been signed. One full-time equivalent increase in the Community and Civil Enforcement Team for 25-26. Is there a seconder? Councillor Clark. Sorry, Councillor Allen. Do you want to reserve the right to speak? It's okay. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Almost standing up here on my own then for this one. But as we are all aware, fly tipping, dog fouling and litter offences continue to have a big impact upon East Staffordshire as a whole. And whilst commendable efforts have been made over the past few years by the council to tackle them, the council has never been able to fully get to grips with dealing with them, either with the timely intervention of the removal of fly tipping, being in the right place at the right time of dog fouling, or being able to kind of send out and prosecute for littering and fly tipping as well. And whilst there are some initiatives that the council are looking at which could free up further time within this community and civil enforcement team, such as the introduction of ANPR, for example, on car parks, which would then free up enforcement time to go elsewhere, I think the introduction of one further full-time employee within the civil enforcement team would greatly help the capacity and the ability of the council to start to get on top of this problem, particularly because this capacity could either be used as overtime for the existing team or by increasing the actual head count of the team. I think the policy itself is a very fair and costed policy in terms of the assumptions around a 6-month period built in for the hiring of it, meaning a limited nominal impact of 20k for 2025-26, and then that ongoing initiative costing in the region of £41,000 to £42,000 a year going forward. I think one of the things that we sometimes fail to look at when we do these budget proposals is the social and health impact that these initiatives can have, of which I believe it would be great for this one in terms of dealing with fly tipping, dog fouling and littering offences and furthering the work that the borough has already been doing to just greatly improve that capacity. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak? Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Interesting, isn't it? It's been going on, this shortage of staff to be able to do the job properly for a number of years, most of which your group has been in control, and then suddenly, in the first year that we're in control, we suddenly need to provide extra people. However, I would point out that we're already committed to having a new fly tipping vehicle, which at this very moment is being built, and I'm assured will be ready in May, together with a number of staff to man it. So it would seem a bit early to start bringing in other people to improve the thing when this might very well in itself solve the problem that you're talking about.
Thank you. I can't see anyone else, so I'm going to go back to Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, true. Fly tipping vehicle was one of the initiatives that Councillor Clark was quite supportive of in his proposing. I don't think it's something that we would have done if we'd been in control of the council. To be honest, we would have doubled the size of the enforcement team, as was pledged in the manifesto, and that was the initial. That was what we tried to do last year in the amendment. That was voted down, and so we thought we'd come back with something a lot more modest. It appears that perhaps that's not going to be supported either. But I would point out the fly tipping vehicle that was in last year's budget and is in this year's corporate plan isn't actually going to be delivered until May. There's still a problem, unless I'm mistaken. There's still a problem in the number of fly tipping events. There's still dog fouling and littering ongoing is still an issue, and so increasing the amount of resource in that team is clearly would clearly help. I remember going out with the civil enforcement team on their little ward walks in all parts of the borough. Spoke to most of the team at one time or another, and they do a fantastic job, really good job. And when you talk to them about the things that they need to get on and do more, it is actually either more time on the job or more people to help them fulfil the roles and duties that they've got. And I remember making a comment to the head of service after I've been on these ward walks with the civil enforcement team. They do a great job, but it is a drop in the ocean in terms of what actually needs to be done. So a modest increase this year. We'll probably be bringing it back again next year. As I say, we think it needs to be at least double the size of the current team, the current team level is at the moment. I think I'll just pick up on Councillor Fletcher's comments around previous administrations. Perhaps previous administrations did cut back too much. I think this administration said last year that they wanted to increase headcount, and so, you know, I'm not going to be held responsible for what previous administrations did. I was one vote on that in that group, and the moment that I took over the group, I thought this was a really important thing that we should be doing and try to increase it, not just in this service area. We did it in regeneration, we did it in planning as well. So I don't think this is a particularly big issue. It would just help that guys that are already doing a good job do an even better job.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, when we set the budget, there's a process which starts back in November with the Star Chambers, and we invited the opposition to participate in the Star Chambers. That is where we have detailed discussions around our service delivery and our resources. If they had attended those sessions, to which they were invited to, they would have heard the discussion and the debate that we had around our resource level around this area. But they chose not to attend those sessions and not contribute when it was the right time and they had the opportunity to do so. They declined. But in this amendment, it commits the council to additional spending year on year, starting from 20,000 to 41,000 to 41,000 in subsequent years. So we have just gone through the review of the service and the staffing level, and we are content that we have the number of staff to respond to our needs. Now, we, as Councillor Fletcher has already stated, we have additional resources for the procurement of a dedicated fly tipping vehicle and associated crew to man that vehicle, with that vehicle on target to be in place in May. Additionally, the current corporate plan also includes the following targets in relation to fly tipping. GND02, undertake further tackle the tippers campaign initiatives in any newly identified fly tipping hotspots and report progress. This is on target to be achieved. We have another corporate plan target, GND11, ensure that 75% of fly tipping is removed within 5 working days of receipt of notice from the CCE team for areas covered by council. Again, this target is to be achieved. It's on target to be achieved. So really, again, my recommendation is that we reject this amendment, because we've already gone through the process of reviewing this area of our service, and we're happy with that.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. I'll now move to the vote on the amendment on enforcement. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? One abstention. So the motion is defeated. Thank you. So back to the main motion again. Councillor Locke, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would also like to propose an amendment. The creation of a dedicated scrutiny officer who will be solely responsible for supporting scrutiny.
Thank you. Well, this one's short and sweet. The creation of a dedicated scrutiny officer who would be solely responsible for supporting scrutiny, signed by Councillor Locke. Is there a seconder? Councillor Allen. Do you want to reserve your right to speak? Okay, Councillor Locke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try and make my speech short and sweet too. So I stand here as a previous scrutiny chair. The proposed amendment is a change to the way in which we currently support scrutiny in terms of officer support to scrutiny as a committee. Now, you might be wondering why I'm suggesting that. I attended the LGA's excellent 2-day scrutiny training a few years back. I'm not going to reprise everything they told me, but two key things are pertinent here. The first one is scrutiny is not political. So this is not a political one. If I wanted to be political, I'd let you lot make mistakes and then we'd point them out. That scrutiny is not political. The second one relates to pace. So the LGA say that short reviews can be done in a meeting. Longer ones in maybe a few weeks or even a month or two. Look inside your hearts. You must have attended scrutiny meetings. This council's scrutiny meetings are not taking a few weeks or a month. Some of our scrutiny reviews are edging towards years rather than months. There is clearly an issue there, and it is a complex one. I'm not going to pretend there's a magic budgetary wand that will make the problem go away and the pace speed up all by itself. But one of the issues we have is the way in which we're supported. At the moment, there's a sort of a voluntary system in place whereby officers can volunteer to assist with scrutiny. They can get a small payment for that. It's a wonderful scheme, but that should be providing surge capacity for scrutiny, not providing the backbone of investigatory support for scrutiny. So what I'm suggesting is we have a dedicated officer to work with us to speed scrutiny up, to increase our scope of scrutiny reviews, because at the moment we're only doing 1 or 2 in each committee. And that's what I'm proposing. Thank you for your listening.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else want to speak? Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. In view of no one else indicated at the moment, just put it very briefly, nearly £124,000 out of reserves over that 3-year period, when we have only just implemented the honorarium to get officers to support scrutiny, only just come into place. 5 or 6 officers keen, put their hands up, jump in to help with that, and we haven't even given it time to bed in. I think this is very premature. I won't be supporting it.
Anyone else? So I'm going to go back to Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can't really put it any better than what Councillor Locke did. Really, we do have a problem with scrutiny. I think the structure isn't right, and I know that was for the large part taken over from previous administration, which I led. But I've never really thought that scrutiny has done the job that it really could do. We've got some great examples in the past where a scrutiny review is concluded and it has led to a new policy or new actions, and where that's happened, it's really good. Obviously, members remember from last year our position, or what we said at the corporate plan meeting last year about the fact that there have been no scrutiny reviews concluded, and I think to date we're only actually on 2. And so there is still an issue, and this amendment seeks to try and fix that problem. Yes, the honorarium was a step forward, but in reality, officers from all different service areas have always been able to participate and help scrutiny run reviews anyway. And what this means is that we can have a dedicated officer that isn't tasked with anything else other than supporting scrutiny, of which there are 4 scrutiny committees now. But as Councillor Locke says, you don't need me, members don't need me to tell them how difficult it is to get scrutiny reviews up and running in the first place, and then actually produce something that's useful for council to include, which only really improves council services and things that we're doing.
Thank you. Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is another proposal which commits the council to further spending, and an ongoing commitment for the future years. I think we have some very good staff and we also believe in giving people the opportunities to broaden their skills and develop themselves. So I think we have people who are able to, who are supporting the scrutiny through the volunteering process, and they are providing some good quality support to the scrutiny reviews. And that could be judged by the recent reviews undertaken by, which were led by Councillor Hadley on exercise provision for young people, and another review which was led by Councillor Michael Slater on community engagement mechanisms regarding climate change. So I think if you look at those reviews, I don't think there's a need to actually have a dedicated officer, or rather, I think we are managing adequately and actually providing the support, whilst also giving the opportunity to our staff to develop and broaden their skills. So again, I will urge that we reject this amendment 2.
Thank you. So we'll move to the vote. So all in favour of funding a scrutiny officer? Those against? Any abstentions? No, so the motion's defeated. Thank you. So once again, back to the main motion. Councillor Sankey.
The button. Apologies on that one. I'd like to raise amendment, please, to the budget on provision of targeted time-limited winter fuel allowance scheme within East Staffordshire. Thank you very much.
Okay, just for everyone's benefit, thank you. Winter fuel payment scheme, provision of a targeted and time-limited winter fuel allowance scheme within East Staffordshire, and it's signed by Councillor Sankey. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Allen. Do you want to reserve your right to speak? Yes. Councillor Sankey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I may, before I start the detail, these amendments, what we've done, we have actually done these with advice from the finance, with sort of officers' advice from the finance on that. So the previous ones where the cabinet, the figures were incorrect, if finance people got it right, doubt, or he was incorrect. So I think I'd like to pick that up at a later date, if I may, Madam Mayor. But these amendments, which we have put forward, have been checked and validated through to the officers on that point of view. So I'd like to point that out. So the figures that I believe we've got in these, or to the best information we've got, has work been done on them by the officers. So picking up this one, central government changed the criteria again, the pensions to winter fuel allowance, as we well know, and a lot of pensioners suffered as a result of that. What a number of authorities have done across the country as they've looked at this and saw that their residents were suffering. Their residents were suffering badly, right? I produced a paper which I believe the Leader of the Opposition copied to all councillors before this, giving some details. That we put forward 5 councils, example of 5 councils that supported this. They weren't all one party. There were Labour councils, Conservative councils and independent. I think it was a Labour, but they squabbled amongst themselves and it went to independent. So councils around the country are looking to try to protect their most vulnerable people in society. This one here, what we've done is looked at the schemes that were out there at the moment, and with advice from the finance people, came up with one that was financially most advantageous to the council, i.e. spending the least amount of money on the administrative side of things, which I thank the 151 officer for his help on coming up with those options. So we're looking at a scheme here based on the Sandwell scheme, which is a Labour administration not too far away, looking at that to try to help the disadvantaged people in our community. The scheme itself the proposal of the scheme is to look at those people who are on a reduction in their council tax, the local council tax reduction scheme, but not on pension credit, i.e. they wouldn't be allowed to claim the winter fuel allowance on the government side. So we've looked at that. East Staffordshire has 2,500 pension-age households in receipt of local tax reduction. Of those, 2,000 of them are on pension credit. So that leaves a maximum of 500 people, homes, that this is targeted at. People are on that line that they're struggling with. This proposal effectively says to write to those and offer those people a £200 equivalent amount of money to support those people. That would cost £100,000 if all 500 qualified. On top of that, there is an estimated cost that has been validated from our finance people of just over 26,500. So here we are. We have got a scheme that is in there that is trying to support our most vulnerable people in this authority, and based on what the neighbouring or local authorities have been doing. So I will leave it at that, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody want to speak? Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I wasn't going to, but I will just say this, because I know my colleague, Councillor Chowdhury, has got some more interesting data and information, but I didn't like what the Labour government did either. Many of my colleagues in here don't agree with it. I think it could have been done better, and I think they could have been a bit more sensitive about where that limit was, where you got pension credit. But it's been done, and I don't think a small borough council should pick that tab up. We can't afford it, so why should we? So I won't be supporting this amendment.
Okay, I saw Councillor Hussain first and then Councillor George.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just echo with the leader of the councils? Yes, we didn't like, honest truth, what happened with the winter fuel allowance. But it doesn't mean that we have to do the central government's job. We are not in the House of Commons, we are in the Town Hall chamber. You mentioned about some authorities, this data. Out of 317 councils, you only mentioned the 5 councils coming to this end. You got to understand, I'm telling the other side of the chamber, our manifesto commitment and was no jobs cuts and no cut in services. We said it, we did it. We cannot do any whimsical decisions that will stop us what we are doing. Of course, we will carry on our lobbying to get the best deals for our pensioners wherever possible. Thank you, Madam Mayor. For this, I will not support this amendment, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor George.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's quite disheartening standing here listening to what's going on today. You know, I thought we were a caring, supportive council, and I'm not getting that feeling. As I look around the council chamber, I can see lots of us, and we all know vulnerable people, and they all need our help, no matter how small that is, right? It could be 50 pence, it could be £1, it could be hundreds, but I feel we need to be providing that, and we're not. Like I say, it's really quite disheartening. Any help we can offer, that is what we should be doing. These vulnerable people need our support. You know, this scheme's worked for other councils. We may not be able to hit that amount, but we can hit something. Something is better than nothing. And I'm really sorry. I'd just like to take a moment and get everybody just to take a breath and think about it. You know, this decision that we can make right here and now is going to save not one life, but maybe 2 or more. So please take a moment and just think about what lives you could and couldn't be saving. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I could in fact support many of the ideas that have been put forward in these amendments today. But having listened to them, I see them for what they've been, gesture politics. After years, and I mean years, of Tory failure, both in national government and here at East Staffordshire Borough Council, even though George doesn't accept any responsibility for what's gone before, they expect us to put everything right in our first year. Even worse, they expect us to improve the services that they've hit without increasing our income. And in the short time we've been here, I'll remind them, they've criticised us continuously for taking measures to improve revenue so that we can support those in greatest need. All of a sudden, the Tories see themselves as being the champions of the weak. Where were you when your government cut the local authorities year-on-year support, culminating in this council being 6.4 million worse off? Where were you when David Cameron said we're all in this together and then proceeded to hit the poorest amongst us whilst protecting those who could most afford to pay more? Where were you when George Osborne said the rich will be asked to pay a greater share, but it's a delusion to think that taxes on the rich will solve the problem? What is unfair is that people listening to this programme going out to work to see the neighbour next door with the blinds down because they're on benefits. How disgraceful is that to come from a Minister of State? Where were you when your group under Richard Grosvenor, and I don't blame all you for this, when Richard Grosvenor's group cut all the support to voluntary organisations on the grounds that no organisation had an appropriate safety policy? ESREC, East Staffs Race Equality Council, no safety policy. Citizens Advice, no safety policy. The YMCA, no safety policy. Come off it. Where were you whilst your government was increasing the gap between the haves and have-nots, despite all the evidence that this only leads to a nation where there's more discontent, more crime, more problems with health, both mental and physical, greater civic unrest, and a greater feeling of nastiness all round, opening up to a rise in populism, which is arriving today, and an increase in racial hatred? I don't remember hearing a peep from anyone on that side of the chamber. We should all be in this together. Bev, we should all be in this together. We should be shouldering our share of the moment, with the most paying the most, and those most in need receiving the greatest help. Our motto should be, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. Your amendments are far from that.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's disappointing, the comments that Councillor Fletcher made then, given that the Labour group stood on a manifesto aiming to reduce inequality, and had been presented here with a simple amendment which could actively do that against a policy which Councillor Fitzpatrick himself said that they didn't necessarily agree with from central government. I mean, the benefit of the wording of the amendment here is that despite Councillor Sankey producing with the officers a detailed impact assessment of what that policy could look like, it gives plenty of scope that they could either decrease or increase that to further reduce the cost, even to a payment of, say, £50 per head, which would significantly reduce the cost but go towards helping reduce inequality as they stand to do. I think it's also telling that we're here talking about events from 15 years ago, and I apologise to Councillor Fletcher that I was just 16, 17 years old back then and wasn't standing up to previous councillors for decisions they were making here. And I think it's also apt that this isn't the first year of this administration. We're now going into the second budget and third year. So nobody's asking the administration to solve any of these problems within their first year. I think the trouble is that, as Councillor Fletcher alluded to then, they'd rather talk about the past rather than picking up these policies that would have a meaningful impact to residents from a non-party political basis and actually make a difference to the lives of those residents and suffering inequality. We'd much rather stand in the past blaming somebody else with our head in the sand rather than taking action. And I think it's quite disappointing that given the flexibility within the amendment, something as simple as this, which has been done by several councils up and down the country, has been so needlessly rejected, and so needlessly rejected on party political grounds. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I don't wish to prolong the debate for too much longer, so I'll allow a couple more speakers. I've got Councillor Walker and then Councillor Wildman.
Yeah, and I promised Councillor Clark I did listen properly this time, so apologies for the last one. This is a difficult one, and like many colleagues said, this is difficult because, you know, whatever happens, this plays on a lot of the conscience. And I think remarks were just said, and I did hear this one right about her having her head in the sand. Well, we have her head in the sand. I invite Councillor Clark to come with fellow colleagues every month when we're feeding OAPs in the wards, and we're helping, we're hands-on the front line. So he can come and he can come and sit with us and help and serve food to them. That's not an issue. But to suggest that I have my head in the sand is furthest from the truth, because we are on the front line. We're doing it day in, day out. We did it before the winter fuel allowance. We did it during the austerity years. And I hate to go back through history. And Councillor Clark mentions he was 16 at the time. He may have been 16, but he was probably at the Tory Young Members Conference, and he was probably sitting there putting his hand up to all these austerity measures was coming, when they come in. But research from the University of Glasgow published a book called Social Murder, Austerity and Life Expectancy in the UK. Details of how austerity policies led to the decline in life expectancy. These are the things that stick with us. These are the things that hurt us when our own government introduced it. But at the moment, my understanding, these awards that they're referring to are made to higher tier authorities where they've got that money from central government to do these schemes. And my understanding is the county are running something similar. So it does weigh heavy on my shoulders, this one, but I shall listen to the cabinet member before I make a decision. But to suggest that I've got my head in the sand and suggest this is difficult, because believe you me, we're on the front line. We do it every month, day in, day out, feed the most vulnerable, including young people, including families that are struggling for food and can't put food on the table.
Thank you. Councillor Wildman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Walker, I know you've not got your head in the sand, but just because you're on that side of the chamber doesn't mean that we don't care as well. And I certainly haven't got my head in the sand when it comes to these issues. I will just say as well, Councillor Fletcher, I know you keep going on about history and so on and all that sort of thing, but it is your government, your Labour government, that actually took the winter fuel allowances away from those pensioners and those people that are vulnerable. You know, it is a fact. You can't take it away from, you can't say that that isn't a fact. And also, I seem to remember you all voting for actually the winter fuel allowance. Presumably you all voted Labour, I'm presuming. So therefore, you know, you must have thought to yourself, well, gosh, are you against your own government now? Are you all against your own government? Because I think if you are, then maybe you need to move on to this side of the chamber as well. It's just, no. Well, maybe we should all be together and actually help the people that you took the winter fuel allowance away, and actually really think about what you're doing instead. Councillor Hussain, you did mention, and I will say this, you did mention earlier on that we should all vote with our conscience when we came to your motion. I voted for that because I believed in that motion. You know, we need to all support this amendment because of that fact. We should all come together. Is that not correct? And if that's not correct, then maybe, you know, we're all doomed, quite frankly. We should support those people with the winter fuel allowance that your group took away. This amendment does that similar thing. Thank you. Well, you know what I'm saying. Yeah, but you support that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to Councillor Allen at this point, and then Councillor Chowdhury, and then we're going to take a vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, in the previous debate about a pension credit campaign, Councillor Chowdhury was quite happy to talk about what Department of Works and Pensions are doing to promote this, you know, that pensioners can take advantage of the pension credit. And now he appears, or they appear to be saying, well, it's got nothing to do with us. It's a government thing. This motion, this amendment, sorry, is yes the last in a list of things that we could that we've tried to propose to try and improve the budget in front of us. And just picking up on what Councillor Fletcher said about gesture politics, I'm quite sure how you can accuse us of gesture politics, but then go on and on and on about things that have happened many years ago. And I wouldn't necessarily say I'm absolving myself of any responsibility in any of that. But these motions, these amendments, you know, you can't just say, oh well, look at all the damage that you guys have done on that side for however many years, and then refuse to do anything about it now. This is about looking forward. All these 5 motions are, and this motion, this amendment is about looking forward and trying to do something about it. And if the amendments around pension credit had been supported, the actual cost of this amendment may have been reduced anyway, because this amendment means that you're only eligible to receive any funding from it if you're not already in receipt of the pension credit anyway. So you kind of really cut your nose off to spite your face. And I know Councillor Fitzpatrick talked about just how sizable this is. Admittedly, it is quite sizable. The impact to the community, the people that have lost the winter fuel payments, is sizable as well. But as I say, if you'd have supported the pension credit amendment, the impact to this council could have been a lot less. I don't really have anything left to say, Madam Mayor. I think it's a shame. I think it's disappointing that we've come with 5 amendments that have gone from absolutely costing nothing to costing only really a modest amount now, and all 5 have been refused. And the amount of politics that has been heaped on top of it is absolutely unnecessary. And I'm not sure we've approached the debate in the same way.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. I'll just remind you we haven't actually taken the vote yet on this last amendment. Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, as the evening is going on, it's getting worse and worse, isn't it? And Councillor Sankey cited councils who are providing this particular winter fuel support. And he talked about Sandwell, Tower Hamlets, North Lincolnshire councils. But, you know, he hasn't told the full story. That's presumably because he doesn't know. These I need to point out to you. that these councils were able to provide the support from Household Support Fund. You know that? Great. Do you know Staffordshire County Council? So he's been all round Birmingham, Lincolnshire, London, but he forgot that we live in Staffordshire. So we talk about Staffordshire. Staffordshire County Council also received Household Support Fund grant to the tune of £5.5 million. And to all of you who have spoken so passionately about this item, do you know that Staffordshire County Council is offering winter fuel payment, not £100, not £200, but up to £300. £300. And guess what? Where are we? We are in Staffordshire. Surprise, surprise. That is our area. That is for the benefit of our residents. Yes, Councillor Clark, yes, we are in Staffordshire, in case you're mistaken. This money, this significant money, was given to the higher tier authorities. It wasn't given to the Borough Council. And hence, these authorities are able to utilize this funding to support winter fuel allowance. Now, next year, the government have announced to extend the Household Support Fund to the tune of £1 billion. Accepted that local authorities don't know how much they're going to get, but you can guess that Staffordshire County Council will be receiving some more money from this fund, as they have done previously. So I think to suggest that we don't care or somehow we are dismissive, I think it is a case of playing politics, not sharing all of the information with this council, and it is indeed playing nothing but politics. So I say that the way to deal with this is to, again, because this support is already provided in this area, that we reject this amendment. But we're quite happy to collaborate with the County Council when they know their future share of the support fund, and we're happy to collaborate with them and encourage them to continue with the winter fuel allowance payment. But as we speak, here and now, there is no merit in actually supporting this amendment. So I urge you to vote this down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. So we'll move to the vote. Those in favour of the amendment for the winter fuel payment scheme, please raise your hands. Those against? Those abstaining? So the motion was defeated on the amendment. So we move back now to the main motion. Does anybody want to speak on that? Councillor Sankey.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Chowdhury is quite right. We should tell the full story. And as he's pointed out this earlier on, 1 year 0% increase. He didn't tell the full story that is probably the lowest amount that any government you've got from any government over the last recent years in terms of settlement, even compared to last year. Your government has not done it. You also haven't told the full story. National insurance, 1.32 million contribution. You forget to tell us that that is not covering the full picture of how much you owe national insurance. So please don't lecture me on not telling the full story, because you're a master at it. So I would consider that as a, we can bounce these two merrily. Also, Councillor Fletcher, on discussions around that, about how poor the Conservative government was. Your government, you were criticising this quite reasonably, actually, on multiple years' coverage for the budget. And I think that's a very valid point. Yet your own government has done exactly the same and not give you the national insurance. But so there is a lot here of, as you quite rightly said, wishy-washy stuff, to use your words, Councillor Chowdhury, around this. It is slightly disappointing and slightly worrying if we started thinking around in the box, because there is this magical thing. There's this thing around is that the central government, the Labour government, is looking to effectively do away with us at the moment. You know, they're looking at effectively doing away with us, and therefore, all this ideas of looking forward 3, 4, 5 years, we have to do it, but when we can give some small amounts of money in the budget, which I think now, to help our residents, when in 2 years' time it could all be sucked up into a large unitary or multiple unitaries, I think is disappointing. And I would have liked to see some of those things. Also, I do take your point. I was aware of where the money was, the money coming from on that. If the county council has got the money for winter fuel, why weren't we asking for it ourselves collectively? I would have been happy to be standing side by side with you.
Councillor Sankey, are you speaking for or against the motion?
I'm speaking against the motion. I'm asking why these things were not in the motion.
But they're questions. Can you just keep to the point, please?
Okay, Madam Mayor. Yeah,
because time is going on, and I am going to propose an adjournment as soon as this vote is taken.
Right, and okay, and also in terms of messages, our MTFS smoothing reserve, which was the new homes bonus, which is quite substantial, is there to help us on things, and I don't see it being used. We've put the same amount of money in to our reserves into the new homes bonus this time, effectively the full council tax increase, as we did last year. We put them into 2 reserves, not 1. This year we put it into 1 reserve. I'll draw a line now there, but disappointed where you give one view and it's not quite the whole picture. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to go to the seconder now, which was Councillor Fitzpatrick, I believe. Excuse me a minute. Okay, I did say that time was going on and I was only going to allow a couple more speakers. Can people show me their hands who wants to speak? Right. So I've got Councillor Allen, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Locke, and that's the end then, because we really do need to finish. And then back to the seconder, yes. Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Allen, if you could be brief, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies, the budget's one of the most important things we do every year, so I'll say what I need to say and I'll judge it to you whether or not you think that's brief or not. I think it's really sad, really, that we've proposed a number of amendments, the first of which cost absolutely nothing, and even that was rejected. And as Councillor Chowdhury quite rightly said, yes, things have got worse as the night have gone on. Absolutely they have. The budget, as proposed, does a number of things, and I'm supportive of a number of things in there. However, you know, last year we set a budget with a £264,000 surplus. This year, proposed budget is a £486,000 surplus. That's £486,000 left over that we are just going to put in the reserves and not spend. And so the amendments that we put forward were really an effort to try and use some of that, some of that funding, some of that money, but alas, the administration and the Labour led council don't want to support not even any of it, not even if it costs nothing at all. And so we end up with a budget where we have cut business support at all. We've cut CRF in this year. Councillor Chowdhury talks about how difficult financial circumstances are for this council. What about the financial circumstances of businesses that this scheme was supporting in the first place? Is the difficulties going to resume next year, but it's okay this year? It seems rather like we are pulling the drawbridge up behind us. And a ward enhancement programme which is yet to be funded. So I understand it's not in this budget, and we're waiting to see how much money we get from government in the UK SPF. Really, all this is about, and I've heard this a lot from different members over the years, it's just politics. And for the most part, I understand that. I know what game we are in here, and a lot of things are just politics. Unfortunately, tonight, what has been demonstrated, that this is not just politics, this is petty politics. We're not going to be supporting the budget today because the administration has failed to support even anything that we proposed that doesn't cost anything at all.
Thank you. Councillor Locke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think some of my points have already been made, so that will speed this up. So, CRF cut, ward enhancement, I know it came from SPF, and I know that was one-off, but it helped spread regeneration money outside the cities. It was doing good work. We could have funded it again. We're not suggesting you go on some sort of spending spree like Labour of old, but we're squirreling away more and more money into reserves. We're going to cease to exist in about 2.5 years' time. We shouldn't be trying to increase our reserves unnecessarily. We should be trying to help our local community. None of the things we've said this evening were going to bankrupt this council. And I'm very disappointed in the way in which you're handling regeneration outside of Uttoxeter and Burton. So, thank you.
Okay, I'm now going to move to the seconder of the motion, which is Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We'll keep this brief because I know Councillor Chowdhury will pick everything up anyway. I'll just mention that we had 5 amendments. All of those amendments, we had 3 days notice this time, so I appreciate that. That was useful. All asking to take money from reserves. And reserves have been mentioned quite a bit just. I'll mention the Star Chambers. Nobody came with these ideas before. You should have came. We would have been listening. You would have been able to put things forward. This might be the last 3-year medium-term financial strategy for this council. As Councillor Sankey highlighted, we may not, next year we might be setting a 2-year one, the year after perhaps a 1-year one. People are saying run down the reserves. 2 types of reserves: general reserves set at a minimum of 2 million on the recommendation of the Section 151 officer for unforeseen events, something that suddenly catches us unawares, and we have to react immediately and not cut services and jobs. And our earmark reserves that everyone's saying is healthy, but in the report before you, you'll see that next year and the year after, there are big uncertainties and black holes. And to rob the reserves at this point is risky, to say the least. Now, we know funding reforms are coming along. The business rates that will hit councils, that's been confirmed now. And the government have said they're consolidating lots of areas, different funding pots. But it's not coming to us. And along with they're going to be using deprivation statistics. I think leafy Staffordshire might not come out too good on that scenario. And they're also going to be directing these fundings towards authorities with social care duties. So I believe the picture ahead is worse than we thought 3 months ago. So we can't start just throwing reserves away at this point. We can certainly look at it as we get nearer the the end, but we've got plans that are working going forward. We have to make sure the money is there for them plans, and we will try and finish what we set out to do. I'll definitely support this budget. I think it is definitely a good budget. The officers and the cabinet members deserve thanks, and their teams, for putting it together. It is sensible. I'm disappointed that the Leader of the Opposition said he can't support it. I hope you don't vote against it, but we will definitely be supporting it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'm going to allow Councillor Chowdhury a brief right of reply before we move to the vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Sankey, thank you for highlighting what's in the report already, or you know, and in my opening speech. Of course, I've said it's 0% increase in core spending power, and it's likely to remain zero going forward. So we are in no doubt that we are in really tough and challenging kind of financial times. You mentioned national insurance. Of course, if you read the report, we say that yes, the support that we've had from central government hasn't been enough to cover, and that's increased pressure on our finances. So if you know all of these things, I thought, you know, and then every amendment you propose, really, apart from one, you're then advocating we spend more money, which you know that we don't have. So that's quite an interesting kind of way to put forward. In terms of, you mentioned smoothing reserves. Look, given the outlook and given what we know now, yes, we need to put money in the reserves, only to draw down next year and even more the year after. So it's the money that we need to make this council sustainable going forward. Councillor Locke mentioned regeneration. You know, I'd urge you to read these reports. I really do. And look at the capital program. Over £40 million is capital program. And there's a lot of regeneration in there. So I urge you to look at that. Look at the acquisition of the maltings that we just purchased maltings, for example. You know, that is all regeneration. So you just need to look at the reports, look around you, and you'll see a lot of regeneration, and a lot more to come in the coming months and years too. You talk about the ward enhancement program, you know, quite rightly, and let us not forget that this ward enhancement program was the village enhancement program. Village enhancement. It was this administration who took the decision to rename it and call it ward enhancement program to make it the needs-based support for our local community. So we came up with a criteria that helped the communities in the borough in the most deprived areas. But we just didn't do that. We weren't bloody-minded. We didn't say, okay, you know what, we'll take the money away from the villages and we'll invest it in inner parts of the borough. We actually made it a borough-wide program. We called it Ward Enhancement Program, and quite rightly channeled the money where it needed the most. And the other thing we did, we actually upped that budget for that project to £1.5 million. And in the last 2 years, we almost spent that money. We gave it for the benefit of our communities, and we are proud of that initiative. Now, looking forward, looking at the records, what did we come up with? Councillor Sankey talks about finances, Councillor Allen talks about finances, money, this money, you know, we could do this and the other. It was under your control.
Councillor Chowdhury, I did say brief. Could you finish your remarks, please?
Sorry?
I did say a brief, right?
Sorry. I'm just concluding. Please allow me. There's obviously quite a few councillors spoke, so I do need to respond to them. You were in control when this council had to give £398,447 of Section 106 money back to the developer. Nearly £400,000 were given back. Why? Because you did not want to spend that money in Burton. And that was a bad decision. That was a bloody-minded approach that was taken to keep that money in Uttoxeter. If you can't do it, then you'll give it back. That money could have been spread across Burton and for the benefit of our residents. We had to give that back. Another point I want to make is when we took over, we were going through a taxi litigation. And that court case, when we took over, because of the decision that was made by this council under your administration, cost us £9,707. And we, as soon as we got in, we actually dealt with that dispute and the litigation, and that court case was pulled out. So we saved this council a lot of money by acting swiftly as soon as we got into the control. So, despite the challenges I've highlighted and difficult financial times, we are presenting a budget with a net growth budget of over £800,000. And let's not forget, you talk about the history, that during the austerity period, we lost 78% of the grant, which is £6.4 million. But on top of that, the decisions that were taken by your group, by cutting and freezing the council tax, also cost this council £2.1 million. That £2.1 million is year-on-year loss. Imagine if we had an extra £2.1 million of revenue in our budget, what we could do with that money. So, here's a budget with net growth, increase in the capital cost, capital spend. As Councillor Hussain said, no job cuts, no cuts in services. And another thing that we are proud of is that we are promoting apprentices and trainees. Currently, there are 12 apprentices and trainees in this council. That represents 5% of FTE workforce. I think that's a huge achievement and one that we should be proud of. We believe in developing the talent and actually promoting our own talent. So, we've also introduced local council tax scheme, changes to the local council tax scheme, again to help the people that you were advocating for a few moments ago. Instead of giving them 75% discount, now we will be giving them 100% discount. Another initiative that we ought to celebrate, which will help the most needy people. Councillor Wildman, you know, that is what we are doing, even with these challenging, difficult in times. So, to conclude, we are committed to dealing with envirocrime and carbon reduction. We have quite an ambitious agenda that we as a council are working on and will continue to do so for the benefits of our residents. So I commend this budget, and once again thank the offices and my cabinet colleagues for helping to draft this forward-looking budget. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. So we're now going to move to the vote. All in favour?
It must be a named vote.
I'm just being reminded it's a named vote, this one. So my colleague will read out the names.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I'm going to read out your names in alphabetical orders. If you could let me know whether you're for, against or abstaining, I would be very grateful. Councillor Afsar. For. Councillor Allen. Against. Councillor Beach. Against. Councillor Bullock. Against. Councillor Chowdhury.
For.
Councillor Clark. Councillor Fitzpatrick.
For.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Gaskin.
Against.
Councillor George. Councillor Gould. Councillor Hadley.
For.
Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Holmes. Councillor Huckabee.
For.
Councillor Hussain.
For.
Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Penny Krupski. Councillor Justlove Krupski. Councillor Legg.
For.
And Councillor Locke. Councillor Mansfield. Councillor McKiernan.
For.
Councillor Peters. Councillor Steve Sankey. Councillor Shrive.
For.
Councillor Slater, Michael Slater. Councillor Simon Slater. Councillor Smedley. Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Louise Walker.
For.
Councillor Paul Walker. Councillor Colin Whittaker. And finally, Councillor Colin Wellman.
Against.
Motion carried.
Okay, so the motion is carried. At this point, I'm going to ask for an adjournment till 8:45. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? I think that's carried. So 8:45, please. Just time for a toilet break. I'm just being told that the Azara people are still downstairs and they would like some photographs with people. So I think if we can get through the next bit without too much delay, then we can go down and see them and maybe have a group photograph taken. Okay. So item 7, I'm going to invite Councillor Chowdhury to present the Treasury Management Strategy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report presents the Council's updated Treasury Management Strategy for 2025-26, which also includes the supporting minimum revenue provision policy, annual investment strategy and mid-year update. As members are aware, the Council follows statutory guidance and the relevant codes of practice in relation to its treasury management activities and its investments, with security being a principal consideration, followed by liquidity and finally return. The strategy sets out that the Council's underlying need to borrow is forecast to be broadly flat over the medium term, which reflects the proposals included in the medium-term financial strategy. The economic outlook has changed significantly since February, and this is reflected within the forecasts of interest rates and the updated economic overview provided by our Treasury Management advisors. For clarity, there are no proposed changes to the existing framework and controls that are in place for the management of the Treasury function, including borrowing and investments. Additionally, there are no proposed changes to the policy for minimum revenue provision. The report has also already been considered by the Audit Committee, whereby the committee recommended its approval to the Council. The report therefore recommends that members approve the Treasury Management Strategy, Statement and Minimum Revenue Provision Policy and Annual Investment Strategy 2025-26 set out in Appendix A to the report, and note the mid-year update set out in Appendix B. I commend the report to the Council for approval.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Fitzpatrick, do you want to reserve your right to speak? Okay. So, anybody wish to speak on this item? In that case, I'll go straight to the vote. All those in favour of the Treasury Management Strategy? Any against? Any abstentions? I think that's carried unanimously. So, setting the amount of council tax for 25-26. Again, I invite the Cabinet Member for Finance and Treasury Management to propose and present this item. Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report formalises the setting of the council tax for 2025-26 in accordance with appropriate legislative requirements. The MTFS presented earlier in the agenda proposed that the Borough Council's element of the council tax for 2025-26 increased by 2.98%, the equivalent of 11p per week, to £204.55 for a Band D property. Members will note that all three of the other major preceptors have increased their council tax rate as shown in paragraph 4.3. The charges for local preceptors are set out in Appendix 13.6 to the report. I therefore move the recommendations set out in Section 11 of the report.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for this vote? Councillor Fitzpatrick, are you going to reserve your right to speak? Okay. Does anybody wish to speak? Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since local government reorganisation is on the agenda quite so nationally, and it's something that this council has got to deal with, I thought this would be a good opportunity to point out where reorganisation and more devolution needs to happen. For many years, the way that the council collects money through council tax scheme, I think, has been quite difficult to understand, certainly for residents, but quite difficult for any administration to have to deal with. So we'll support the increase in the council tax, because anything other than that is really, makes it very difficult to net the amount of money that we need to gather the amount of money that we need to gather if we were to see increases in services in the future. By that I mean, if you were to reduce council tax by 10 or 20 or whatever % that you needed to this year to balance it, instead of going into this year with a £465,000 surplus, you could reduce it and not collect as much. So you can't, because next year you're only then really restricted. You can only really then increase it by 3% and not back to the level where you needed to. And so really, it's really just a pointer that the government and any government before us, I think it's been remiss of them not to allow councils to the real financial freedom to set council tax and things like business rates as well, although over recent years we have been able to retain a certain portion of it. So for that reason, we're going to support increasing council tax. What I am surprised, though, is that any member opposite would also support the council tax increase, because as we know, through the general election campaign, their leader and many members of the cabinet who are now in control pledged and promised to not raise taxes on working people, and more specifically, not to increase council tax, and that they would freeze council tax. And so I'm very surprised that we appear to be raising council tax here, because the administration is also a Labour administration, the same one as there is nationally.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak? No. Councillor Fitzpatrick? No. I'm going to move to the vote, and it's a named vote again. Sorry. Do you want to speak, Councillor Chowdhury?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I need to respond to Councillor Allen. I think, as I alluded to before, when the council tax was cut or frozen during the previous administration, going back to last decade, it resulted in a reduction of £2.1 million in revenue, and that reduction is year on year. That's not one-off reduction, and I think the equation is quite simple. We need to balance our services with the money that we've got available. So as I said, if you're going to provide and quality services and maintain services, we're going to regenerate the borough, and we're going to deal with the climate change and the carbon footprint. Then we have to explore all of the ways which are available to the council to raise those finances to deliver the services that our residents expect of us. So in order to do that, it is necessary to increase the council tax to the limit we are allowed by the government to 2.98%. So it is quite a straightforward. And if we didn't do that, and if we don't, as Councillor Allen kind of acknowledged, if we don't put the money into the reserves, then the future outlook suggests that we'll have a big hole to fill, which obviously will struggle if we didn't plan for this sustainable future financially for this council. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to hand over to the monitoring officer for a named vote.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, again, I'm going to read out your names in alphabetical order. If you could let me know if you're for, against or abstaining, I'd be very grateful. And I'd also ask that you switch on your microphones when you're telling us what your vote is. Okay. Councillor Afsar.
For.
Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Beach.
For.
Councillor Bullock.
For.
Councillor Chowdhury.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Fitzpatrick.
For.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Gaskin.
For.
Councillor George.
For.
Councillor Gould.
For.
Councillor Hadley.
For.
Councillor Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Holmes.
For.
Councillor Huckabee.
For.
Councillor Hussain. Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Penny Krupski.
For.
Councillor Justlove Krupski.
For.
Councillor Legg.
For.
Councillor Locke.
For.
Councillor Mansfield.
For.
Councillor McKiernan.
For.
Councillor Peters.
For. Excuse me. For.
Councillor Sankey.
For.
Councillor Shrive.
For.
Councillor Michael Slater.
For.
Councillor Simon Slater.
For.
Councillor Smedley.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Louise Walker.
For.
Councillor Paul Walker.
For.
Councillor Whittaker.
For.
And finally, Councillor Wildman.
No surprise, I'm for.
That's the motion carried. Mayor, unanimous.
Thank you very much, everyone. So the next item, I'm again going to hand over to the monitoring officer, the implementation of the Procurement Act 2023, amendment of the Constitution.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, the new Procurement Act comes into force on the 24th of February 2025. One of the main purposes of the new Act is to reform the UK's procurement regime following our exit from the European Union. The creation of the new Act has allowed our lawmakers to improve things in the interim, like transparency, flexibility, efficiency, all when procuring goods and services. And you might be aware, councillors, that the Act was originally due to come in force in October 2024, and that was until central government delayed the Act until later this month, the 24th of February. With the original date of October 2024 in mind, an officer working group began meeting in April 2024 to consider the extent of the changes required to our Constitution, in particular Part 4D. The Council's procurement policy was considered alongside this. Officers outsourced the work to Anthony Collins LLP, and as the changes to the Constitution and procurement policy were received, the working group were meeting and reviewing the documents from a procedural perspective, ensuring that there was alignment with the Council's approval and authorisation processes, for example. A large part of the changes to the Constitution come in the form of terminology. So, for example, we are now referring to the World Trade Organization rather than the EU procurement rules. There are also several new notices required under the Act, and these are detailed in the appendices in Part 4D. There are various new definitions introduced, also included in the appendices, and there is the exemption form to the contract procedure rules, which has been amended to reflect the new requirements and includes additional authorisations from relevant officers when we need to consider the use of an exemption. In conclusion, councillors, the recommendations in the report are that full council approve the adoption of the amended Part 4D, and that's appendices A and B, that the monitoring officer also be authorised to make any necessary further changes to the draft documents, consequential or incidental to the intentions of full council, and that the proposed changes to Part 4D of the Constitution, Appendix A and B, become effective on the 24th of February 2025. That's the implementation date of the Procurement Act 2023. And that is unless implementation is further delayed by central government, which we do not anticipate at this point. Finally, from information councillors, in terms of the procurement policy, that's directly linked to Part 4D. It's an executive document, and the amendments to that document will be approved by executive decision record in the next week or so. I'm happy to take any questions. Councillors, May.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a rather boring question, just in regards to recommendation 15.3. If the implementation of the legislation was delayed again, what would be the benefit of this council delaying these changes to the policy versus just adopting them on the provision that the Act would eventually come into force?
Well, the changes to Pot 4D are being implemented on the basis of the changes in law. So in terms of process, terminology, procedure, references to the European Union, which no longer technically exist. So it would be misguided to allow those changes to go through. And I think if there was any further delay, it'd be delayed with good reason in terms of guidance, in terms of concerns from central government. So my advice would always be to hold off until we know for sure that the legislation's being implemented, which, you know, on the vine, I don't believe there's going to be any further delay.
Okay, can I have a proposer for this motion? Councillor Fitzpatrick, and a seconder, Councillor Fletcher. Does anybody else wish to speak? No, we'll move straight to the vote then. This is just a straight hands up vote. All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? No, that's carried, thank you. So the next item is the review of the Statement of Licensing Act Policy 2025 to 2030, including the review of the Cumulative Impact Policy. I invite Councillor Saeed Hussain, Chair of Licensing, to propose and present the item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Under the Licensing Act 2003, the Statement of Licensing Policy must be reviewed every 5 years. The current policy has been updated with the latest legislative changes using the guidance issued by the Home Office in 2023. The Cumulative Impact Policy, which forms part of Council's statement of licensing policy, has been reviewed at the same time this document has been reviewed and updated by Staffordshire Police. The licensing team have carried out a consultation exercise between the 7th of October 2024 and 3rd of November 2024. 2 representations have been received. Consultation outcomes. The first response is from Staffordshire Police Chief Inspector, who comments that the content of the policy meets with their approval. The second response is from Aldi Area Manager, raising concerns on the forthcoming Martin's Law and how it will be implemented by businesses. As yet, the new legislation has not come into force. The bill will establish a regulator to oversee compliance, though a new functions of this Security Industry Authority, SIA, the core principle of the regulator's activity will be to support, advise, and guide businesses to implement the legislation's recommendations. Licensing Committee have considered the revised Statement of Licensing Policy 2025-2030 and recommends the content as suitable for formal adoptions full councils. The Licensing Committee also recommends to full council that associated cumulative impact policy be approved for adoptions by the authority.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Krupski, thank you. Do you want to reserve your right to speak? Yes. Does anyone want to speak on this? No? Councillor Krupski, anything? No? Councillor Hussain, any last remarks? Okay, we can move to the vote then. All in favour of the Statement of Licensing Act policy? Any against? Any abstentions? Councillor Walker, I wasn't sure then. No, that was unanimous then. So, secondly, again with Councillor Hussain, we have the Gambling Act 2005, Statement of Principles Review and Consultation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Gambling policy introductions. In accordance with the requirements of the Gambling Act 2005, the licensing authority is required to publish a statement of policy every successive 3 years period from the first appointed day. The Council's policy has been revised its current policy to cover the next 3 years, which is February 2025 to February 2028. The Council consulted for 28 days on the proposed changes. These concluded on 4th November 2024 and was presented to Licensing Committee on 3rd December 2025. The committee recommended the policy as suitable for adoptions by full Council. Officers referred to the Gambling Commission's most recent guidance to inform the changes. The amendments to the policy include an update to the ESBC populations, information on the potential future for cumulative impact assessment, and voluntary changes to the Gambling Commission's requirements of small society lotteries. Consultations outcome: 3 responses were received to the consultations. Acknowledgement emails were received from Burton Parish Council and Dunstall Parish Council. A 3rd response was received from Game Care. Recommendations: full councils are asked to consider the report and the recommendations from the licensing committee that they consider the draft gambling statement of principles as suitable for adoptions.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Fletcher. Do you want to reserve your right to speak? No? Okay. Anybody want to speak on this? In that case, I'll move straight to the vote. All in favour of the Gambling Act 2005 Statement of Principles Review and Consultation? Any against? Any abstentions? No, that's unanimous. Thank you. So lastly this evening, we have 2 questions have been received. I'll take Councillor Clark's first. There's a written response. Do you want to ask a supplementary question? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, thank you for accepting this as an urgent question. I know it's an issue that matters a lot to the residents of Branston and Burton. This is in regards to the closure of the Branston Bridge and the eye-watering amount that will need to be raised of between 20 and 30 million for long-term repairs and rebuilding of the bridge after the temporary works have been completed, which are currently ongoing to extend the life of the bridge for just 10 to 15 years. Given this council's ambitious regeneration efforts and the choking and crippling effect that the closure of this bridge is having on not just the community of Branston, but Burton and the surrounding area as a whole, it would be a shame to see that these regeneration efforts are choked at the first hurdle due to the glacial pace of which government funding is often secured for infrastructure projects. Could I ask the Leader of the Council if he will consider adding the responsibility of pushing forward securing of funding for the bridge to the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and invite the government and convene a meeting in Burton with all relevant parties to help push forward and secure the much needed funding within the next 8 years to secure its regeneration.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Fitzpatrick, have you got anything to add?
I will just add briefly, in trying to respond to the supplementary question. Councillor Clark will know that I forwarded on to him an update from the Cabinet Member of the County Council. At the same time, I forwarded it to Councillor Huckabee, Councillor Afsar and Councillor Said were already copied in on that as county councillors. We are not the bridge authority. It is not this council's job to push that funding. I have actually requested, I sent 2 more questions to the Cabinet Member of the county, and one of them is on that issue. And when I get a response, I'll share that with you. I don't believe it's for our Cabinet Member for Regeneration to be requesting from government when we are not the authority concerned. I do have regular meetings with the MP, and he's doing what he can as well. It's technically not his job either, but he's shouting up for us. I hope that helps.
Thank you. So the second question came in from Councillor Allen, concerns devolution. Again, there's a written response here. I hope you've all had it. Do you want to ask another question?
Yeah, so I think the March 21st deadline, I know, was only initial proposal deadline, but in reality, if the Leaders Board were to come forward, or this council to come forward with an initial proposal on March 21st, and then that to be significantly different to the November submission, I think in reality, we've missed an opportunity for the council to shape what that initial proposal should be in the first place. And so take the point around having a member briefing, and now there is very little time to have a full council debate on it, which is a shame given it affects everybody in East Staffordshire and Staffordshire as well, and it affects the future of East Staffordshire Borough Council as an institution as well. I think it's a bit of a shame we're not going to have the opportunity to have that discussion, formally, albeit. And I would ask, a further question would be, when would that meeting be? Because if it is going to be in November or October, then that still leaves us very little time to shape that submission that the Leaders Board have already started working on.
Okay, Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, Councillor Allen has asked a second supplementary question, but my answer to the first part, in fact, is that answer. It will certainly be before that November, a couple of weeks before, 3 weeks before. It'll be very close to it. We will have time for this council to look at those proposals.
Thank you. So I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you for attending this evening's meetings. There are drinks and some cakes, biscuits and things in the muniments room, but anybody who wants to have their photograph taken with the Azara people are welcome to join me. I don't know, I'm just asking the Chief Executive, would it be possible for them to come up here to have a photograph taken in the council chamber? Can somebody go and bring them here? So I'm not.
Councillor Hussein's on his way down there, Mayor, just now.
Okay, so I'm not stopping anybody going to have a drink in the meantime, but we may need to gather back here. Okay, thank you.
Are we staying here?